From the Diary of Bill Lowie, Saturday, October 24th, 1964. The small outpost of Dan Phouc on the Cambodian border was attacked today by a VC patrol. The water in that area is about 3 feet deep all around the outpost. The VC were able to approach the outpost in sampans and were hidden by the rice. In the firefight that followed, an American captain was captured by the VC and taken over the Cambodian border in a sampan. Our gunships were alerted and rushed to the scene. They were fired on from the other side of the border by 50 cal guns and anti-aircraft artillery. None of them were hit. The captain was found late tonight floating face down in a canal. Today's entry captures a skirmish that took place at the small outpost of Dan Phouc right on the Cambodian border. This border area was incredibly strategic throughout the Vietnam War. Dan Phouc, like many outposts on the edges of South Vietnam, was vulnerable because of its proximity to Cambodia. The Viet Cong often used these border areas to stage attacks, knowing they could easily escape into Cambodian territory, where U.S. and South Vietnamese forces couldn't legally pursue them. Cambodia's neutrality, though often violated, made it a complex and frustrating region for the Americans to control. Popi told us that when he would fly near the border, he'd hear on the radio chatter people speaking Russian and Chinese, not Vietnamese, which brings into question how active those two entities were in the war. To what extent were they advising the other side, particularly so close to the border? One of the most important details from this entry is the way the Viet Cong utilized the local geography for their attack. They approached the outpost in sampans, which are small, flat-bottomed boats, and used the flooded rice fields and the dense water around the outpost as cover. The water in this area was about 3 feet deep, making it difficult for the soldiers to see their attackers until it was almost too late. This style of guerrilla warfare was a hallmark of the Viet Cong strategy, using local environments to outmaneuver better-equipped American and ARVN forces. From a tactical perspective, the entry highlights the vital role of American gunships. When the attack happened, gunships were scrambled to provide air support and tried to prevent the enemy from retreating. They were fast, maneuverable, and laid down heavy firepower to assist the ground troops. But even with these advantages, they were vulnerable. In this case, the gunships were fired upon by 50 caliber guns and anti-aircraft artillery from the Cambodian side of the border, emphasizing the Viet Cong's heavy fortification and strategic positioning. The mention of the American captain being captured and later found dead adds an emotional layer to this story. The capture of the U.S. personnel was always a high-stakes situation. The Viet Cong and North Vietnamese used these moments to deal a psychological blow, both to the troops on the ground and to the morale of Americans back home. The captain's body was later found floating face down in a canal, which speaks to the senseless violence and tragedy that was so common during the war. It is hard to tell what actually happened to the captain and how he ended up in the water. These were the brutal realities of guerrilla warfare, where no one was truly safe, even after being captured. On a broader scale, this incident reflects the diplomatic tightrope the U.S. had to walk with Cambodia. Officially, Cambodia was neutral during this period of the war, but their borders were frequently violated by North Vietnamese and Viet Cong forces, using it as a sanctuary from U.S. and ARVN troops. Later in the war, this would lead to controversial actions by the U.S., such as the Cambodian incursion in 1970, when American troops were sent into Cambodia in an attempt to disrupt these cross-border operations. Finally, there's an emotional cost here, which Popi's diary only hints at. The capture and death of the captain not only represents the very real human toll of this war, but also points to the frustration soldiers felt. The photo I chose for today depicts two Vietnamese people in a sampan. The vessel is driven by a small engine and is carrying a bike alongside the two people. Is it possible these people were a part of the VC, hiding right in front of Popi? How often did he come in contact with the same people he shot at from his helicopter? I'm Alex Lowie, and I hope you have enjoyed listening to this episode of Dearest Suzie, and receiving messages from the past that my Popi wrote exactly 60 years ago. I sincerely appreciate your time and interest. Please consider following the podcast on your preferred platform, and if you're enjoying it, I kindly ask that you take the time to rate the show and leave a review. Also, please follow the project on YouTube, X, and Instagram. All likes, comments, shares, and reviews will help grow the reach of this story. The links for these things should be in the description of this episode. Please feel free to email me at dearestsuziepodcast@gmail.com if you have anything you'd like to say. I'd love to chat or to hear about your stories as well. Thank you for listening, and God bless.